for showing out or coming out to the session this morning about your camp website here, really going through all of the features that are available to use in the fairly new but newly revamped Drupal event platform. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Martin Anderson-Clutz. I am a senior solutions engineer at Acquia. I'm also on something called the Talking Drupal podcast. And last year I was named as the events recipe track lead for the Starshot initiative. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, they can find me as ManClue on all of the Drupal and social platforms. So for today, what are we going to cover? First off, we're going to talk about what is the event platform, what led to its creation, and what are some of its current features. We're going to then dive in and see those firsthand in a demo, the very first live demo of the event platform, so fingers crossed and be gentle. And then finally, we're going to talk about what are some of the things that we want to be working on next, where do some of those stand, and maybe how some of the folks in here might be inspired to contribute. So what is the event platform? Today, the event platform is a set of modules that simplify website setup for a Drupalcamp or similar event. It has a modular content architecture, which currently includes things like the ability to collect user-submitted sessions and BOFs, have sponsors of different tiers. You can have job listings, featured speakers, and a few other things. And it really came out of something that had existed before. There was the Conference Organizers Distribution, or COD as many people knew it. Very popular, particularly in the Drupal 7 days, but never really made the leap to sort of, Drupal 8 and newer versions. And so it left a lot of camps kind of stuck in terms of not really having a good tool set for organizing their more recent Drupal camps. And so the Event Organizers Working Group started an initiative to really create a newer version of a tool set for making these camp websites, easier to manage online, particularly using Drupal. And we also made a conscious decision to not make it sort of Drupal specific, and that's why we call it the event organizers, the event platform, as opposed to Drupalcamp platform or something like that. So some of the capabilities, if you want to use the event platform, that you'll get are things like a specialized workflow to moderate user-submitted sessions. It will automatically notify speakers if their session is accepted or rejected. You can display sponsors prioritized by the level of their sponsorship, so platinum, gold, and so on. Users can flag sessions that they're interested in and then see those in sort of a personalized schedule, as well as some other things that we'll see. There are specialized tools built into the event platform, so one of the things that can be tedious when first setting it up is having to create time slots, and that's for scheduling your sessions. So there is this tool where you just say what are the start times that you need for which days, and then you can have it generate those for you automatically. There is a drag and drop scheduler. There is also now one of the new features of this year is the ability directly within the platform to actually rate the sessions, and this is using a Likert scale, so it's very fast if you want to customize it for the specific criteria that your camp wants to use. And then once you have all your sessions rated, you can use a bulk moderation system to be able to very quickly set which ones you want to accept or reject and so on. One of the, I think, bigger changes earlier this year was that there is now a dedicated, or I guess recommended, I would say, theme specifically for the event platform. So we've called it Event Horizon. It's really a fork of the Florida Drupalcamp theme, and its origin story was really at DrupalCon Atlanta earlier this year. I sat down with Bernardo, one of the organizers of Florida Drupalcamp, and we sort of hashed out, did sort of the initial setup of this, and so have continued to iterate on it since then. Some of the changes are to make a variety of different elements configurable, so as much as possible we want for camp organizers to not need to write code to be able to get their camp website set up. Under the hood, the Event Horizon is using some fairly modern Drupal front-end technologies like single directory components as well as CSS variables. So the way that you customize colors is more in line with how Olivero does it, as opposed to the older color module for people who remember that from older versions of Drupal. Here's an example of what it looks like set up. And then here's where you can see, on the right, we've got all of the different sort of configuration options and how those map to different parts of the overall theme. Maybe at the end, if there's time and people really want to see some of the customization in use, we can do that. But I thought, for today, maybe this slide was enough to sort of give you that sense of how things like even some of the graphical elements can be customized directly within the Event Horizon UI. Here's an example of today what more of an event listing looks like. So the kind of event detail page. So key dates. You can have themes, highlighted sessions, and so on. It definitely could use a little bit more sort of theme love to look a bit fancier, but again, Event Horizon is still quite new, and so expect to see changes, hopefully progressing pretty quickly on that front. And then here's an example of a session page. I've got breadcrumb navigation, categorization all in one line, your session description, links to the speaker profile, and then also it will list concurrent sessions for you as well. So earlier this year, as part of working on the event platform, I got thinking about some of the different camps that I've been talking to about the event platform, and realized that many of them have kind of a consistent structure in terms of the sort of flow in which they organize the camp. And so it got me thinking that maybe we could actually have an event planning workflow. Because typically the way a camp starts is they start by announcing the dates for their camp. At that point they might start reaching out to sponsors, trying to get featured speakers and so on. Then they'll have a call for session proposals where users can go in and submit sessions and trainings and so on. Typically they'll have a session deadline cutoff, after which they will score and evaluate the sessions, decide which ones they want to accept and reject, notify the speakers, start to schedule them, and so on. After that, actually post the schedule so that people can go in, review the schedule, potentially go through, and if they have the capability on their site, start to flag which ones the users want to attend. Oftentimes there's some changes to the site once the actual camp has started, so you might do things like linking to the current day schedules and so on. And then finally, once a camp is actually complete, posting wrap messaging, maybe linking to a video playlist, some of those kinds of things as well. And so I got thinking, if we can say that these are generally a pretty good fit for most Drupal camps or similar events, then is there, predictably different information that we want to highlight at each of these stages? And also, could we automate the transitions between each of these? And what I realized is that for most of these, we actually already had the data, because already as part of the event platform, we were capturing the camp dates, as well as we had a field for people to put in session deadlines. So just by adding fields to capture the scheduled publish date and the date at which we want to open the call for proposals, now we had all of the information that we needed to be able to automate that. And because the event platform was already using ECA, it actually ended up being a fairly simple exercise to set up a single model that could manage all of these transitions. So of course, I had this idea. I wanted to sort of validate it by talking to actual camp organizers. So had a variety of different people from the event organizers working group come in and provide some feedback on this, validate, were the descriptions that we were using as the stages, mapping to how they might refer to that internally. Did they have some different ideas around what information to highlight and show? And so I had sort of this collaborative exercise in a Google Doc of, throwing around some different ideas in terms of what are the things to highlight at each stage, what should the stages be called, and so on. And so this is kind of the current state of where we're at in terms of, what we think is a good representation of what different camps want to be able to, highlight at different stages. But of course, we don't want to hard code all of these assumptions. We want to keep it all configurable so that if a particular camp wants to, have slightly different things or manage the workflow in a slightly different way, maybe they have additional stages they want to be able to incorporate in their own planning workflow. All of that can be done directly through the Drupal UI as well. Part of being able to manage, in particular, menu links that would sort of appear or disappear as part of that whole workflow process required some new code, and so ended up creating a whole new project called Smart Menu Links. Really one of the things that became part of the process of having the event platform being able to manage multiple events, so like a single site that can manage, let's say, a Drupalcamp over multiple years, or even more of an architecture like Drupalcon where it has multiple events per year. Now the event platform can do all of that by managing the events as taxonomy terms, and then using a lot of sort of contextual arguments within the views that display different kinds of data. But if you've ever tried to create a menu link within views where the path has an argument in there, views will tell you very loudly that it does not support that. And so Smart Menu Links is sort of meant to provide that capability to dynamically link to a view in a way where it will try to parse out from the current path what is that contextual argument value based on where the user is in the site, and then point them to something related. So as an example, if I was on the, let's say, the 2024 MidCamp website, looking at a list of sponsors, if there was a link to sessions, it should similarly show a list of sessions for the 2024 MidCamp as opposed to the current years or something like that. So the idea is to try and sort of like keep the context of where the user is, and that's where the Smart Menu Links idea came from. It does also provide the ability to have a fallback, and so in the case of how it's implemented for the event platform, it tends to use a token, which is part of that sort of global configuration of like what's the current event. But then similar to the way the same capabilities around contextual arguments work in views, you can provide validation to say, as an example, the value that we're looking for is a taxonomy term of the event vocabulary. It also does some other sort of validation pieces, really to try and, as quickly as possible, determine whether or not we're in a place of the site where we can pull that out of the URL, or should we just fall back to like a globally configured value. And critically, the Smart Menu Links are configuration entities, so they become part of like the configuration management that you can keep part of your workflow with Drupal as well. Some of the other things to support this workflow idea are a custom CTA block that shows one of several CTAs that you can sort of in one place manage, and then you can specify which ones to show at which point in that workflow. So as an example, during the initial state, that sort of save the date state, it will show sort of a call to action by default of like subscribe to our newsletter. But then once the call or the call for session submissions open, the call to action switches to submit a session, and then afterwards it's register today and so on. But all of that is customizable, again, for whatever your camp specifically needs. There is also the ability to, especially on the event listing page, the event detail page, to have block visibility based on moderation state. So there may be different, again, based on the stage of your event planning, different information you want to highlight, and sort of that block visibility allows you to do that. There was an existing module called Moderation State Condition that worked with nodes but not taxonomy terms, but was able to work with the maintainers of that to actually get a new release out that includes the ability to manage that for taxonomy terms as well. So that's a lot of talk. Let's get into the demo and actually see some of these capabilities firsthand. So, and I will say, I've already mentioned it once before we started, but this is actually literally the first live demo of Event Platform. So, there will be some rough edges as we go through. Particularly the Event Horizon theme is like still in alpha, so you will see a few things that we're still actively working on. So let's go through here. We've got the Event Platform site as a fresh Drupal 11 install, so we've still got just our basic article and basic page. But if we go in here to the Event Platform, this one will install a variety of the sort of submodules as they are today. And you can see installing this one piece will install not only a variety of submodules, but also a variety of different dependencies, get all of those configured for us as well. And so, as that gets updated, now if we go to our home page, you'll start to see a few different things here. So you can see links on the top that are there, but don't actually link anywhere because we still have to do more site configuration. We have the ability now already to add sponsors, but let's go ahead and also enable the Event Horizon theme. Now, it's saying it needs the Event Platform Bundle, which we have installed, but also that moderation state condition module that we talked about earlier for block visibility. So if we say moderation state condition, let's get that installed. Now if we refresh here, we can install and set as default. And now if we go back to our site, now we can see, obviously it looks very different. Now up here we have a prompt to provide our event info. So let's say our current event is a 2025 camp in London, Ontario, Canada. Let's say it's going to start in August on the 14th and end on August 16th. We want our session submissions to open on Monday, and then let's give that about 3 weeks. Commit to publishing our schedule at the end of June, and that's enough. Now notice we have all of those states that we talked about for the actual planning moderation, and now we can provide a little more information about the actual camp itself. So let's say this is the Man-Clue Drupal camp. I'm just going to give it some dummy description for the homepage. Maybe we want the media CTA, so that's sort of the call out under the main heading on the homepage to point to the current event. Details. And we also can provide some stats for the camp. So again, this is sort of modeled off of the Drupal Camp 2025 site. So we could say and maybe we'll add one more. This one to be create a couple of stats, save that, and now if we go back to the home page, you can see it has the name of our camp, has the location and dates, and then all of that information that we provided. As we talked about before, we could also customize some of the colors. You can see here where there's kind of that overlay texture that, again, we can customize by uploading file. We could upload a new graphic like SVG there. But for now, let's go on with the setup of our camp. So we could add a sponsor here. Let's go Acquia. And that there. Maybe we'll set them as a platinum sponsor.
Text.
Text, of course, very important. And okay, so now we can see the sponsor listed there. We could also add some news here, so let's just do a test article. Just put some dummy information for now. We can tag it, but notice it automatically populates a association with current event. And so we can see that listed again on our event detail page, and then we can add a featured speaker. So maybe we're going to expect to have Dries present. That in there. Don't forget the alt text this time. Maybe we will grab some more Epsom here. Drop that in. Maybe that's a little long. We'll go there. We'll just grab the first sentence as the summary. And we could simplify this form with some additional configuration, but I think that's a decent starting point. You can see it's got the featured speakers. We could add more. But hopefully that gives you a sense of, the basic process of getting it set up. Now, one thing I wanted to show here is if we wanted to see how some of the, again, automation of the workflow works. If we take our sessions open date and just sort of backdate it and save that, and let's go ahead and run cron. Notice now that we have a call to action automatically populating here. We've got an additional link in the menu navigation for sessions. And so again, it's changing elements of the overall layout based on how we've configured the site. I mean, it does some of this out of the box, but as a camp organizer, you have the ability to configure all of this in the UI. And then having set it up initially, know that it will follow all of those, as you've configured it through the life of your camp. So now what we could do is let's go ahead and, as an anonymous user, come to the site, and maybe we want to go ahead and submit a session. That is one of the things we'll talk about in a moment. Account settings. Because there is a limit to how opinionated the event platform is, there are probably a few things today that you are going to want to change. So, as an example, allowing visitors to be able to register themselves. So if we go here and submit a session again, now we have the ability to create a new account. Let's go command clue. We could give it a display name. Could put it, obviously you would want to put in a bio, all those other good things. And then if we go to mail pit and copy this link address. Now we can go in and give our password. But I guess the point to make in there is that, again, using ECA, it was able to redirect people, instead of showing a 403, to sort of that login or register page. And now I can go in here and submit the session. Session. Provide some metadata. Notice that it is also, anywhere possible, pre-populating fields with relevant data. So if I'm submitting a session, it stands to reason that I'm probably going to be at least one of the speakers and only have the ability as a speaker to propose a session. So save that. Go back into our site. And now if I go into the content as a administrator, notice that I have this option now to evaluate the session. So here's where you can use the predefined criteria, but if you wanted to also go ahead and so it doesn't by default enable the web form UI. Probably if you wanted to customize that is definitely something you would want to do. So we can do that quickly. And now you can see, edit this. It's a very simple process. If you want to change any of the values that are going to be used to evaluate your sessions, you can add additional ones. Totally up to your camp how complicated or simple you want to make that as well. In the interest of time, I think probably what we'll do is load a set of sessions that I've already created. So tdev. And now if we go into here and go into our dedicated session ratings interface, notice that it now provides us a list, of all of the sessions that have been listed, and then links to the session, as well as a direct link to the web form. But again, if we go directly to a particular form or a session, it gives us the ability to moderate in line. So it can be useful if, like, you don't remember what all of these ones are, you can sort of go through them one by one. At some point we may do more of like a toggle, so like a linear way you can step through all the sessions. All of these are things that, like, as we get more feedback, we can sort of refine these and make them easier to use. But now if we go back to the ratings interface, you can see it's listing at the bottom ones that we've already rated, and so we can just sort of go down the list and get them all rated. Let's do... So let's do... So again, in the interest of time, so too fast on the refresh there. Now if we go back to here, skip ahead to a version that has most of these rated already. Let's go ahead and say, let's just assign some values, and then we can go ahead and evaluate the last of them. And so now it's going to show us we have all of these sessions rated, and there's messaging at the top that if the whole team has done all of their evaluations for the sessions, now we can go ahead and bulk moderate the sessions. And so notice that now we're in a list that by default is ranking these by the score, but we can also filter them. So maybe we want to say, let's start by looking at our theme design and usability track, and now maybe we want to take the top two of those and go ahead and accept those. So let's say yes. And now if we go back to our mail pit, you can see that it's sent out emails automatically to the session authors saying, congratulations, your session has been submitted. And now if we go back in here, in a similar way, we could go through and say maybe we want to just grab all of these, set those, or depending on how you want to organize these, we could also do it more by audience. So maybe we want to say, let's look at all of our beginner sessions and grab the top rated ones of those. Or we can just say, in the interest of time, let's just grab our top rated overall and accept all of those.
Are you shift clicking in that list?
Yes. Yeah, that is one of the things in Gen that works. Like, there's nothing that I did specifically. It does that out of the box. So again, yeah. Just one of those little things that makes life so much faster and easier. So now we can go in here and start to make use of some of those other tools here. So we have that scheduling interface that we talked about before. We can customize, maybe we've got more than just sessions that we want to moderate, so BOFs or other kinds of things that you might create for your own camp. You can specify which workflow you want to say, so maybe accepted is probably more likely the ones that you want to moderate or schedule. And then you can also define if you've got even other vocabularies that you're using as metadata on your sessions that you want to be able to sort of categorize as you go through and schedule. But let's go ahead and save those. If you go to our scheduling interface, it's telling us that we need to actually generate some time slots now. So here's where we can use that tool. So it automatically will pre-populate what we said before as our start and end dates for our camp. So maybe we say the last day we want to make for contributions, so it's really just the first 2 days that we want sessions, and maybe we want to customize this a little bit because let's say we want to have a coffee break in the morning and then a session after lunch after the first session. So we can do things like that, customize that, and generate that. And now if you go to our scheduling interface, we can see that it's generated all those time slots for us at specifically the start times that we provided. And now we've got all of our accepted sessions, and we can go ahead and start to drag and drop those, and it'll automatically give it the metadata of the room and start time that we assign just again through the drag and drop interface. So we'll start to see as we populate those out, kind of a visual way of assigning those. Again, we can sort of filter those. So maybe we want to say, let's do all of our intermediate sessions together. And notice when we've got something filtered that it's also highlighting in yellow the scheduled sessions that actually meet that filter criteria. Also, it's going to highlight in red anytime you've got sessions that are scheduled that have the same speaker as the one that you're actually dragging. So it won't allow you to schedule two different sessions in the same time slot that are the same speaker, because obviously the person can't be in two places at once. So it's going to prevent you from doing something goofy like that. But now we can go ahead and drag all those, again, with the ability to filter these in a variety of different ways depending on how you want to schedule those. In the interest of time, I'm again going to go ahead and also jump ahead and restore a version of the site that already has all of our sessions scheduled. And so now if we go back to our site, notice that the CTA is changed to register today because the event has been moved to the scheduled stage in the workflow. So we've got our scheduled menu link. And if we go in there, we can see there is a bug again in the theme where currently the session titles aren't displaying, which looks a little goofy right now. But notice that it's generating the tabs for us automatically based on the dates. And so with any of these, we can go in, view the session page. So we've got, it's automatically generating our breadcrumb navigation, putting all of our metadata in a single line at the top. It has links to the speaker profile as well as listing out other sessions that are running concurrently. And then we have this ability as well to say, add this to my schedule. And then we can go up to my schedule and see all the ones that we flagged as like the ones that we're interested in attending and so on. So all of that, a lot of that out of the box, but also fully customizable so that you can sort of tweak that to whatever you need for your particular camp. So I think with that, we'll go back to our slides, jump back in, and talk about what's coming up for the event platform. So definitely recipes is a big innovation in the Drupal community. More recently, we have this idea of site templates, and so at a minimum, would like to create a site recipe. More likely, depending on how soon we get some of the technical details about what will constitute a site template. Potentially, event platform could be a site template. But by having at a minimum a site recipe, we can be a lot more opinionated about a lot of the minute details that are really outside the current scope of the event platform. So a simple example is that idea of allowing users to register on their own, but probably a variety of other things around like meta tags. We could have a setup for doing social media images automatically generated, lots of different things around user experience and so on. Would love to use the Drupal CMS installer, so that idea of like giving people the options of all of the different submodules or sub-recipes that would constitute the event platform, and allow them to choose, like, do you want that ability to flag and make your own schedule, or is that not relevant to yours, as opposed to sort of like having to go in with an assumption of which ones will sort of meet the use case for most camps. A lot of the existing modules were actually developed before recipes were a thing, but notionally in terms of how they're made are very closely aligned with the idea of recipes. So for the most part, what makes up the event platform today is largely a set of configuration that's done in sort of a composable way, which is really what recipes are. So would love to get the meat, I guess, maybe almost all of the event platform moved into recipes, and then those functional pieces like the time slot generator or the drag and drop scheduler moved into separate projects that could be configurable, and so potentially used for other kinds of projects as well. Have been talking to folks about Drupal Forge, about having a version of the event platform as one of those ways that you can spin up a Drupal site in just a couple of minutes. So the idea of being able to click on a tile for the event platform, fill out a small form, and then being able to try out event platform right away, I think is fantastic. And then you can play around with it if you like it. Get that moved into some form of public hosting as well. Technically, there already is a version of event platform, but it's a little out of date. And because event platform is moving really quickly right now, I want to get it into a bit more of a stable place before we go ahead and do that. There is this thing called AI that lots of people like to talk about in 2025. And so have already been having some discussions around how could AI add value to the event platform. The one use case as an example that comes to mind is maybe as part of a user submitted session moderation. You could have certain criteria that it's looking for spam links or looking for things that go against community standards or different kinds of things that way that could be useful to camp organizers, but would love to have any input or feedback in terms of how people think AI might be useful in this context.
You could call that recipe the Malum recipe.
Oh yeah. One of the things I want to work on actually tomorrow is in the header, the sort of home link today uses the site name, but I think again once you're in the context of a particular event, it would make sense for the name to change to sort of reflect that specific event that it's showing, and then also link to the detail page for that event as opposed to linking to the site home. I think that's probably mostly doable within the theme itself, so I don't think that's should be too much work, but one thought that I had is potentially within the smart menu links that we talked about, moving the logic of sort of teasing out what's the referenced entity, maybe putting that into a service so they could be reused for other things as opposed to having sort of code that does the same thing in different places, working in slightly different ways, which from a maintenance standpoint is definitely not the ideal approach. And then the other thing is today the speaker role has the ability to create sessions, and that never really changes, which for the most part isn't the end of the world. Theoretically, you could manually enable or disable that permission at different workflow states. I thought about trying to use ECA to modify the role based on the workflow state, but then that would apply globally anyway. But as I thought about this, I thought, well, we have this access policy in API that's fairly new in Drupal, and this is really the kind of use case that it's applicable for. And so I've had a look. I don't think the code looks like it should be too onerous. Have to define a custom cache context and then an access policy service. This is going to be a new exercise for me. If anybody else wants to sort of be part of that process and learn about the access policy API, this could be a fun way to collaborate tomorrow as well. So that is the event platform, but would love to get any feedback or answer any questions that people might have. Yes?
I had one. Repeat it for the mic, of course. When you're doing approvals of sessions and stuff, is there any workflow in there to do a multiple contributor thing? You usually have a committee that does the sessions, and I don't know, yanking the old 5-star module into use to basically be this person thought this session was a 4, this one thought it was a 3, then you go to an admin-only view and you're just kind of well, let's approve the sessions and have higher rankings kind of stuff.
So the question was about the session evaluation and if there's a way to sort of aggregate that for a team. Is that sort of a good summary?
Yeah.
So actually, I guess I didn't say that at all, but the tool that we saw actually works exactly that way. So I showed it as one person going in and evaluating those, but effectively each person who has the permission to access that form, and probably we could do some fine-tuning in terms of who should have that. I think there is a session moderator role as part of Event Platform, and everybody who has that role can go in and basically create ratings for any of the sessions. And then the page that we saw, that moderator page where it shows them listed by average score, is actually average across all ratings for that particular session. So you could have 10 people do it, you could have 2 people do it. It's completely up to how your team wants to use that. Yep.
So when you were creating the event, there was some workflow there that was taking you through creating the taxonomy term and then a page and then a few different things. How does that work? Like that workflow of kind of generating,
So you
taking
were
the user through creating all of those things.
So you were asking about when we did the initial setup, it sort of prompted to fill out different fields and create the event taxonomy term. Actually,
But it was like the term and then a page and then it seemed like it was a bunch of different things. This is just like inline entity form, or it looked like you were creating a bunch of different entities or nodes kind of all together.
So I think what you're talking about is the config page, and when you first create the site, it basically says provide event info, and then once you first set it up, now it changes to edit event info, because it's like, okay, well, I have information, but you can update that now if you want. And so it has the inline entity form for the taxonomy term here. Whichever one you have chosen in here will be, for the rest of the site, the default is like the current event, but you can have multiple ones on your site. And then further down, you've got things that are going to be displayed mostly on the home page, as well, like in particular the stats. The other thing is right now, again, sort of inherited from the Florida Drupalcamp, there's this sort of like flyout with like a high-level agenda. So probably that's going to follow a similar model to like the stats. Theoretically, there might be a way to sort of take these and marry them up with like the tabs on the schedule page, so that like day 1 where it says Drupal trainings, it could actually have that information on the tab itself. Maybe. Still need some discussion around those, but these are some of the ideas that we're sort of kicking around in terms of like how it could be more customizable. Did that answer your question about like how it's managed and stuff?
Yeah, so I think it's, I didn't realize it was a config page, so it's a config page with a bunch of inline entity forms.
Exactly,
yeah, that's really nice. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Any other questions? Yes.
Question, with the configuring in the event horizon, that's the theme, when you do that initial configuration, it's like theme settings?
Right, so actually, we could go into that right now. If you go in here and go into the settings. And so you've got the ability, so we could say change the primary base color from that like pink to more of like purple. And then we could change this secondary color to something that's going to look really gaudy, like a bright orange. and save that. And now if you go back to our site, you're going to see that like it kind of makes your eyes bleed, but it's sort of a, obviously you would want to have somebody with some knowledge of like accessibility and some of those things making those color choices for you. But, one of the things that we heard is that there are camps who don't have any like front-end expertise or even resources, and so the idea of being able to do all of that directly in the UI was something that they were asking for. Yes?
What Slack channels or communication methods does the event platform, event planning use?
Yeah, so there is a monthly meeting for the event platform. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's third Wednesday of every month. It's going to be there's like a Drupal core calendar or something like that. I just got access to sort of get it in there as a recurring event. But there is an event platform channel, so usually at least a day in advance I'll sort of mention in there, hey, the next meeting is coming up. We do them online as Zoom meetings. The minutes are posted afterwards and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely anybody who's interested in being part of the discussion would love to have your input and your perspective. Yes?
And also the event organizers working group has their own channel and meetings.
Yeah, so definitely from time to time, like there was a point where it felt like I was kind of spamming that event organizers channel. So that's where eventually I was like, okay, we need our own channel to sort of have some of the more back and forth discussion. But yeah, try and every so often make sure that there's updates in there as well.
Last one.
Okay.
If I'm in London, Ontario on August 14th, 2025, what can I expect from your event?
Drupalcamps. Going.
Well, actually, The irony is that August 14th, I will probably be at, well, maybe at GovCon, so it might actually be pretty quiet at Manclue Drupal Camp this year. So, all right, I think we're at time, so thanks everybody.